Leonid Greiser is currently on trial in Russia for the fatal stabbing of his sister, Ariana Carroll. The 18-year-old confessed to this terrible act after being apprehended by Moscow police, claiming he was instructed by Satan to commit the murder. Due to the potential threat he poses, Greiser is being held in a secure glass cell at the Sherbinsky District Court throughout the trial. This measure is taken to ensure the safety of guards, court personnel, and other civilians. At one point during the proceedings, Greiser approaches the narrow opening of the cell and exchanges brief words with a guard in the room before retreating behind the opaque window. But suddenly, he stops abruptly, an idea striking him. Watch again the expression that crosses Greiser's face, a moment of gradual realization. With determination, he bends, reaching his hands through the narrow horizontal window, grasping the outer panel while attempting to maneuver his body through the opening. Unfortunately, his head is too large to fit, so he withdraws and swings his right leg out of the window in an attempt to exit feet first. Notice how the female guard reaches her hands through the window to grab his leg, and he moves back into the center of the cell, out of reach of the officials. However, a new strategy begins to form for Greiser as he looks toward the ceiling of the cell, searching for an alternative escape route. Realizing the situation was about to become even more complicated, the male court officer calls him back to the access window to divert his attention. They converse for a minute, and Greiser appears to calm down. However, just when it seems that peace is restored, the situation takes an unbelievable turn. Greiser jumps onto the low bench in the cell and begins squeezing through an extremely narrow opening between the boards of the ceiling. The officials remain nearby, seemingly not overly concerned, as the defendant wedges one leg on each side of the cell, moving further up along the top. But as he reaches enough height to dislodge the styrofoam panel from the ceiling, the guards realize they are in trouble and act immediately. Watch the three officials trying to climb up to reach Greiser as his body disappears through the ceiling of the courtroom. Despite his legs being secured by two guards and being struck with a baton by the third, Greiser continues to ascend, writhing so violently that his pants end up in the hands of one of the officers. More guards arrive for backup. One of them approaches the fleeing man's leg, wielding a taser, somewhat nervous about the idea of using it. Greiser, fearing being hit, dislodges two of the attic ceiling panels and pleads with the officer not to do it.
Помогите! Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Дайте мне руку!
The guard continues to brandish the taser near Greiser's leg. He starts descending through the ceiling, bringing with him a tangle of wires and panels. Eventually, Greiser lowers himself back into the cell, pulls up his pants, and the hearing proceeds with him handcuffed to prevent further escape attempts. The audacious defendant was found guilty of the murder and declared to the court he had no regrets for his actions, being sentenced to mandatory psychiatric treatment. While the imminent threat of imprisonment spurred Greiser's escape efforts, other defendants, like Diana Lovejoy, face opposing challenges. Lovejoy is in court charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder for a failed murder for hire plot, where her estranged husband was shot in 2016. The mother, known for her YouTube cooking videos before her arrest, was accused of hiring her firearms instructor, Weldon McDavid Jar, to shoot and kill her husband, Greg Mulvihill. Lovejoy and Mulvihill were going through a contentious divorce at the time, and this was part of the final outcome. Following the settlement, Mulvihill was ordered to pay his ex-wife $120,000. After a dramatic trial, Lovejoy was summoned back to the courtroom in Vista, San Diego to hear the jury's verdict. Tense moment, and Diana Bowser nervously makes her way to the table, anxiously waiting. The spokesperson announces she's been found guilty, and Lovejoy's shock is evident. Her eyes widen as she looks horrified at her defense attorney. She remains visibly dazed and stunned as the spokesperson continues, leaning back in her chair with closed eyes, trying to process what's happening. Given the cold nature of the crime she's just been convicted for, you won't believe what happens next.
We're going to need to take a break. Bring it down. And we could have, the jury go back into the
While she vanishes from view before being swiftly captured and lifted back into her seat by the prison guard. Though her eyes are open, Lovejoy seems to be in a catatonic state, her head lolling uncontrollably. The guard tries to stand her up, but Lovejoy, seemingly stiff, collapses onto the floor, eyes still fixed and open. She's placed in the recovery position before receiving medical attention from a doctor present in the room, suspecting she might be suffering from shock. However, prosecutor Jody Breton suspects the entire incident might have been staged.
I'm skeptical because again, she's somebody who will hire a person to kill her ex-husband.
Lovejoy is taken from the court to a waiting ambulance on a stretcher after recovering from a faint deemed by emergency physicians as just a fainting episode. Lovejoy is brought back to the courtroom, where she is sentenced to 26 years to life in prison for her crimes. Some courtroom simulation incidents are more dramatic than others. In Keeson Wilkins' case, it might be the most dramatic yet. Wilkins is representing himself in an Ohio court facing multiple assault and weapons violation charges related to a 2004 shooting. After a dramatic first day of trial, the judge had to evacuate the courtroom multiple times due to Wilkins' behavior. The second day starts with trouble when the judge asks Wilkins if he has any witnesses present in court today.
Wilkins, do you have any witnesses here present today?
To which Wilkins responds in the negative. He tells the judge he needs more time to prepare his defense, to which the judge warns him, saying he's had months to prepare.
You've had months to research this matter. This is why I suggested to you that you have counsel.
Unwilling to grant Wilkins more time, the hearing proceeds, and the prosecution calls a police officer to testify as a witness. As they conclude the questioning, Wilkins begins his cross-examination, and you won't believe what happens next. While Wilkins collapses to the ground and court officers rush to assist him. The judge, already familiar with Wilkins' dramatic flair, appears unfazed and calmly requests the room to be evacuated once again. Trained court officers act as medics, lifting him back into the chair, and a nurse examines him, concluding that there's nothing wrong. Wilkins remains slumped in the chair, seemingly unconscious, as the judge notes for the record that his breathing seems normal, and he appears to be feigning sleep. The situation gets even more bizarre as the officer waves smelling salts under Wilkins' nose, causing a noticeable reaction, making him throw his head back suddenly and miraculously recover from his supposed cardiac episode. The judge proceeds with the hearing while Wilkins remains in the chair with his head thrown back, reprimanding him for his continued disruptive behavior despite being deemed healthy. Eventually, Wilkins is escorted out of the chair and wheeled out of the courtroom in a wheelchair. In the end, his antics didn't do him any favors, and he's sentenced to 42 years in prison. If you think Wilkins' antics were bold, wait until you hear about Daniel Nicholson's escape attempt. Nicholson, 35, appears at the Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in Adelaide, Australia, for a bail hearing related to weapons and traffic offense charges he's facing. He has a long history of minor crimes and drug use, and before attending court today, he had taken methamphetamines. Magistrate Sue O'Connor announces that Nicholson's bail is being revoked. The drug-affected defendant stands up and pleads with his hands up, hoping to be granted bail again today.
No, you can.
Not happy being here, it seems this won't be the case. The judge orders him to sit down, but Nicholson becomes more agitated and restless. Despite Nicholson's previously shocking behavior, things suddenly take a more dramatic turn. A court officer enters the defendant's area to control the situation and calm Nicholson, but instead Nicholson rises to the side of the defendant's area, attempting to climb over the glass panel at the top. Two officers grab him in an attempt to bring him down, and he struggles with one, locking arms as he falls back into the defendant's area. He quickly rises and leaps into the area, landing on the table while a police prosecutor brings him down to the ground, pulling his pants in the process. Once again, Nicholson moves with seemingly superhuman strength to break free from the defendant's area. The situation doesn't end there, and the struggle continues on the floor of the courtroom. Nicholson's supporters, who were seated in the corridor outside, storm into the room. A woman holds Nicholson's young son in her arms and pleads with the guards for mercy. Her cries and pleas that Nicholson is an ill man are audible. The officers eventually subdued Nicholson, handcuffing him. 2 of the court officers involved were injured. Nicholson was sentenced to at least 12 months for the escape attempt, but the judge ordered him to grow up, get off drugs, or face many more years behind bars. While actions like Nicholson's may be explained by a desire to avoid imprisonment, some defendants' behaviors in court are so bizarre that there's no logical reason for them. In the case of Christopher Teal, he appears before Superior Judge Karen Donahue at the King County Courthouse in Seattle. The 26-year-old is charged with rape and unlawful imprisonment following an incident where he allegedly followed a woman into a car dealership's restroom, locked her in a stall, and sexually assaulted her. The victim had just dropped her car off for maintenance moments before the attack, which was only halted when dealership staff broke into the stall and removed Teal, who stands at 6'3", from the woman. Teal's behavior in custody has been erratic so far, and he has been involved in several violent incidents, including an attempt to headbutt a detective questioning him about the dealership incident. Psychiatric evaluation deemed him capable of understanding the criminal charges against him. The psychologist concluded he might be simulating symptoms of a psychiatric disorder, so today he's in court for a competency hearing. Notice his demeanor upon entering the room, looking around in a state of confusion. His court-appointed lawyer, Reed Birkeland, stands beside him. Teal's handcuffs are removed by the prison guard, and the defendant continues to look around in a bewildered manner as the prosecutor starts the hearing. Teal reaches out toward his defense attorney, and the court officer grabs his arm and instructs him to stand still. "You won't believe what happens next." Teal laughs and, without warning, turns back to Birkeland and slaps him. If you missed it, watch again. See how a court officer immediately grabs Teal from the back of the head while another holds him by the shoulders, taking him to the ground. This officer eventually manages to re-handcuff the 250-pound man, and another officer calls for an attendant to bring a restraint chair to immobilize Teal. Available restraint chairs are not present, but officials place a protective cover over his head and escort him out of the room. Birkeland refuses to press charges but steps away from the case. But the madness doesn't stop there. 2 weeks later, Teal is back in the courtroom for another competency hearing. This time, officials aren't taking chances, and he is brought before the judge, restrained in a restraint chair. Before the hearings end, Teal interrupts and incredibly begins to loudly complain about his hair being short in the photo taken for the police record.
I'd like to know where the they got that photo of me with my short hair. Because that was on Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook.
Trying to regain control, but Teal again shouts over him, asking nonsensical questions.
Legitimate questions. Like, do they have access to Google?
Teal is eventually deemed competent to stand trial, and after being found guilty, he is sentenced to 8.5 years to life for his crimes. It's clear from Christopher Teal's case that attorneys often find themselves on the receiving end of bad behavior from their clients. However, as you will see in Alexis Plunkett's case, some attorneys fight back in the most serious way. Plunkett's story is already a crazy one. She is a qualified criminal defense and civil rights attorney who runs her own practice in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's used to being on the other side of courtroom operations, defending clients and fighting in their corner. And, in a way, that is what has landed her in court in the first place. Plunkett is accused of 2 counts of conspiracy to unlawfully possess a cell phone by a prisoner and 12 counts of possession of a cell phone by a prisoner. This is after she was found to have handed her cell phone to a client of hers to use while visiting him in the county jail 2 years earlier. Not only that, but the client in question, Andrew Aravalo, is also Alexis Plunkett's boyfriend. Not exactly the type of judgment calls you would like to see from an attorney. The cell phone charges are a felony offense, and Plunkett is facing up to a year in prison for them. Plunkett's actions and lack of common sense in relation to the matter have been appalling, and it's about to get a whole lot worse for her in court. When the investigating officer takes the stand, he testifies that when police seized Plunkett's phone, they found text messages that she had sent to a group of 6 other attorneys claiming that she had ordered a hit on Andrew Aravalo. Plunkett finishes the message with the words "delete this," followed by a smiling emoji. When one of the other attorneys called her out on it and told her not to joke about things like that, it responded by saying she wasn't joking. She justifies her actions. saying that Arevalo told her he would have her killed, so she wanted to have him killed first. Judge Michael Villani questions the officer about the texts before offering his own opinion to Plunkett, which, as you would expect, is not very lighthearted.
This is bizarre. There's nothing to say. Who in the right mind would send these texts? Like I said, I've been doing this since 1982, and I've never even heard of this, let alone seen.
Despite the prosecution's request for Plunkett to remain in custody, she is released on bail.
It's firm, it's going forward. If you have any motions, file them now. This will not be moved.
Following her previous pattern of poor judgment, it doesn't take long for her to find herself back in court, this time accused of intimidating one of the witnesses in her case. The accusation arises after Plunkett made a social media post referring to a potential witness as an informant. Once more, the prosecution requests her bail to be denied, reminding the judge about the nature of the text messages.
Has said in these texts what she wanted to do. She wanted to have Mr. Arevalo killed or beaten down severely. She mentioned who would do it.
This time, Judge Villani agrees.
To be held without bail pending the trial this month.
In the end, Plunkett strikes a deal with the prosecution, pleading guilty to one count of possessing a telecommunications device by a prisoner. In exchange, the witness intimidation charges are dropped. Plunkett is sentenced to 3 years of probation and barred from practicing law for 5 years. Eventually, the Nevada Supreme Court permanently disbars her. Alexis Plunkett paid a high price for passing a phone to her boyfriend in jail. Similarly, Spencer Boston found himself in trouble for bringing something into the courtroom that wasn't allowed, but for entirely different reasons. Boston is appearing before Judge Haywood Berry for some relatively minor charges. He was pulled over for speeding by the police, and upon searching the vehicle, they found a small amount of marijuana on the Tennessee man. His case is called, and Boston approaches the podium, unbuttoning his coat to reveal a bright tie-dye shirt. The defense attorney addresses the judge, informing that Boston has requested to represent himself as Boston patiently waits.
Spoke to Mr. Boston. He said he wants to represent himself in this case.
However, Boston holds very strong opinions about the law and is about to express them.
I think it's very unfair, the marijuana law here. I think we the people deserve better because marijuana is a very harmless drug and it's been around for ages, since the 80s and 90s.
End of Boston's speech, although he admits that the law is likely unfair regarding the criminalization of marijuana.
So don't go any further.
He resumes the hearing, asking Boston if he wishes to face trial for the charges.
But if you want a trial, we can give you a trial.
When Boston affirms, the judge consults court officials to initiate the bureaucratic process. What happens next is a bold and audacious move. Watch as Boston reaches into his coat pocket. Surprisingly, none of the court officers notice what he's doing as he retrieves a joint and brings it to his mouth.
Hey! We the people deserve better.
For his boldness, Boston receives an additional charge for disorderly conduct and contempt of court, along with a second charge for marijuana possession. Later, he grants an interview explaining how he managed to smuggle the offensive joint into the courtroom without being caught.
I ended up taping it to my actual chest.
Boston spent 10 days in contempt before being released on a $3,000. Sometimes defendants take the situation to an entirely different level, addressing the judge directly. And that's precisely what happened in Alan McCarty's case. McCarty's story begins outside the courtroom when he's embroiled in a heated child custody dispute with his ex-wife. His children are taken away from him, and he mistakenly believes that a court judge named Stachio Warren is behind this. Clearly enraged, McCarty calls the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in Florida to vent about the situation.
Communications, Warhurst.
Yeah, I want to report a crime that's about to happen.
What do you mean a crime that's about to happen?
Yeah, there's about to be a crime that's going to happen if my kids don't come back to me, you stupid bitch. Because your stupid judges don't want to bring people to courtrooms. I got a gun pointed at your building.
Sir, what is going on?
Who the you calling, sir, you stupid bitch? Where's your Judge Warren at? You going to bring that bitch out in handcuffs and I'm going to execute that son of a bitch right in the street. I'm letting you know I'm going to shoot this bitch. You gonna give me my kids?
Where are you at, sir?
I just told you I'm outside of her building waiting for her to get there in the morning. I'm gonna pop a happen. You stupid.
Fortunately, the officers managed to locate McCarty and arrest him, charging him with making a threat against a sitting judge, Here he is in court for a pre-trial hearing, and from the moment he enters the room, it's evident that his volatile nature hasn't subsided in the intervening months.
What a bunch of guys, you stupid piece of
Then also,
You threatened my life, you
Back room.
suck my
The situation becomes more tense as McCarty is asked to raise his right hand to take an oath.
No, I was not sworn in. I've never been sworn in this court.
So that being said, number one, I need to know whether or not you want to be here during the trial process.
No,
All right, do you want to testify?
no, I don't. This is all being done unconstitutionally, unrightfully.
Do you want to be in the room or not?
Do you want to suck my
I prefer not to, sir.
McCarty responds with another string of expletives and engages in a heated argument with Judge Foxman before unleashing a shocking barrage of insults.
Hey, you went to the building and I look like a f***ing idiot, huh? Brought your dress today, you little f***ing prick. You wanna take my kids from me and act like that? You and that Shut the f*** up. I'm trying to think over here.
Eventually, Foxman ordered McCarty to leave the courtroom.
No, I'm not standing. Not resisting. I'm not resisting. I'm just not standing up. I'm not standing. I don't have to stand.
Due to his ongoing verbal attacks, McCarty spends most of the actual trial in a room behind the courtroom where he could hear the proceedings through a speaker and watch through one-way glass. He is sentenced to 20 years in prison for threatening the judge and an additional 10 days in jail for his actions during the trial proceedings. Perhaps the most astounding aspect of this case is that Judge Warren, whom McCarty originally threatened, wasn't even the judge making decisions in the custody case. Moreover, it was found that McCarty didn't even have custody of the children to begin with.
Take my kids from me and act like that? You and that.
Unfortunately, Judge Foxman orders his removal from the court. Due to his continuous verbal attacks, McCarty spends much of the trial in a room behind the courtroom, where he can listen to the proceedings through a speaker and observe through one-way glass. He is sentenced to 20 years in prison for threatening the judge, and an additional 10 days in jail for his actions in court during the trial. One surprising aspect of this case is that Judge Warren, whom McCarty threatened, wasn't even the judge deciding on custody. It was found that McCarty didn't even have custody of the children.